Hello, everybody. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. This is episode number 94. And of course, Automation Unplugged is brought to you by my day job over at One Firefly. Today is Wednesday, January 8th. And let me go ahead and jump over to Facebook just to make sure that we are coming through loud and clear. So just bear with me here. All right. Looks like, and if you're out there on Facebook and you are watching, give us a like and or throw us a comment. Let us know how you're doing and or where you're coming from. Looks like Wes. Let me throw Wes's comment up here. What does Wes say? Wes says, I've been waiting all year for Automation Unplugged. I know, Wes, we are back. So we are now in, of course, 2020. We've started a new year. I hope you all had a nice and restful break and time away with your friends and family for the holidays. And we're now getting right back into action here. All right, so I'm going to bring our guest in. I have the one and only Ian Williams. He is with a company called Aspire Audio Video Solutions. And let me go ahead and bring in Ian. Ian, how are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on, Ron?
All right. And it looks like, and you're actually coming to us from your Aspire Facebook page. That's why I've got Aspire AVS there, rather than Ian Williams. Let me go ahead and pull that off the screen here. How's it going today?
It's wonderful. 66 degrees and sunny here in Charleston, South Carolina.
Awesome. And Wes actually just says, hey, Ian.
Hey, Wes, what's going on?
All right. So, Ian, you and I have known each other for quite a while. But our audience of audio, video, and automation industry professionals may not know you and or know about your background. And as always, I'd love to start there. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of give the 10,000-foot view, as I always do. This will actually be close to 20 years this year that I've been involved in the AV industry. And, of course, like a lot of us, I started out in the car audio. Way back when I was a teenager, tried the whole college thing, didn't work out. And then I actually had my first son when I was 19. So college was cut short, had to come home and become a dad and get involved in some sort of trade. I started as an HVAC technician. That didn't work for me. And so I opened up the Yellow Pages, if everybody knows what the Yellow Pages are still. And I thought, heck, I love theaters. I love music. And why not go work for some sort of AV company? So I opened up the Yellow Pages and called them one by one and got some interviews. And my first job was with the home entertainment company, roughly around 2000, with Mike Zazanis. That's how it all started. And from there, did some residential work, then went and worked in the Pentagon for a couple of years, worked in the Master Military Command Center. That was fun, learned a lot. And that's really where I honed in on a lot of my technical skills, XLRs and everything. That's where I really learned my technical skills. And from there, went back into the residential world. And then in 2004, I was presented with an opportunity to go into ownership with a business partner, with Scott, still owns and runs Front Row Entertainment today. And him and I started Front Row in 2000. And we quickly grew the company, except he had one vision and I had another vision, like most co-owners do, and we amicably split up. And the next day I had $500 in my pocket. This was 2007, and opened up Encore Custom Audio Video. For the next 10 years, Encore, I grew organically from working out of the house to a 5,000 square foot showroom facility with full-blown restaurant. We had the first Atmos Theater in the fall of 2015, if I recall, on the East Coast. And so that was very exciting when Transformers came out with Michael Bay. And over those years, I found us to be very successful, winning a resounding 12 CEDIA awards. We were named Integrator of the Year at CES in 2015, Mark of Excellence Awards, covers on CePro and Residential Systems Magazine. So yeah, I have gone through sort of the gamut. In 2017, decided to sell Encore to another local integrator about 30 miles away, and I was hired back along with my entire staff to go work for them, and I had a 2-year contract. And then after that, I left there to become the director of operations for Star Systems in Maryland, which is now part of Bravus. Everybody knows about Bravus. And at that point is in which when my family and I decided to move to wonderful Charleston, South Carolina, to be closer to family. So that sort of sums it up in a real short nutshell from 10,000 feet.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I guess I'll start with where you ended. How are you enjoying living in Charleston?
It is very different from Washington, D.C. Of course, the D.C. area is about 7 million people. There's about 800,000 people in Charleston. So not only is it smaller, it's just a different way of living. Things are a much slower pace. Let me see. I walked in.
You're not in a flood zone, right? I know that area.
Not right where I'm at, no, but very close by. The Wando River is here in Mount Pleasant. That is a flood zone. So fortunately, we do not require flood insurance where my wife and I live. But Charleston's a beautiful city. If you love water, if you love the beaches, if you love sunsets and sunrises, it's definitely a wonderful place to be.
Now, when you were going through your background and you conveniently or interestingly, you started your business, your second business when you were the sole owner, you started that in 2007, which is the same year I started, Firefly Design Group, which became One Firefly. So we have that in common. But you went on to take that startup business and ultimately bring home a ton of hardware. I mean, you were winning. There was a good run there for years where you were winning regularly, major categories at CEDIA award competitions, and then all the way you became CEA or CTA Integrator of the Year, which is just a really impressive feat. For those that are listening that are wondering, how do they go about going from where they're at today to ultimately winning doing projects that are award worthy? I mean, how did you do that? Or how do you, when you look at that now in hindsight, how do you think you did that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And for many years, we started in 2007, which if we rewind, that was about the worst time, and this, opening up your own business was about the worst time to open up a small business.
Timed it perfectly to be the worst possible time in history in the last 100 years to start a business.
Correct. So we incorporated in, I think, December 2015. So we were going into 2008. And quite frankly, I looked at my business. I was entering that business much more from a technician standpoint. I didn't go to business school. I didn't earn a degree. So what happened was I had, let's say, a lot of learning to do. Okay. And I think that's how a lot of integrators start even today. You have that natural maturation where you start out as a technician, maybe go into project management, you're leading a group of men and women, you gain some management style background, and you one day wake up and say, hey, I see the boss, making pretty good money, and it seems like a viable business option. I'm going to try this for myself. I was no different in that regard. And that's exactly what I thought. I thought I had the skills, presently at that time to open up my second business. But really, I had no idea even then what it took to really run a business. And what I mean by that is, the P&Ls, the taxes, all the things that come with it. I just
firing, managing people, managing customers.
Yeah, process.
Naivete is a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, manufacturers, vendors, ordering, the list can go on and on. So I thought, hey, you just get on, you order a couple of equipment, you go out, execute, collect a check, and goes in the bank, and all is well. Well, there was a lot of learning in between. So to get back to the original question, we incorporated in 2007. I actually didn't enter into a CEDIA award until 2012. So I think in between that 5-year period, I had a lot of growing up to do in terms of how to physically run a business. And like most of us, we fall flat on our face. That's really how you learn is you make mistakes, you fall on your face, you get back up and you say, wow, I'm never going to do that again, right? And so it took a little while to understand that. And even at 2012, I thought my firm, which was a little over $1 million at the time in revenue, thought we were probably too small for the CEDIA awards. I always had that in the back of my head at that time, that we were potentially going up against some much larger AV companies and that I was just wasting my time. And that wasn't the case at all. At that particular time, CEDIA had price ranges, up to 100,000, 100 to $250,000. And I worked on a really, really cool project. I did it with myself and one other person because the other guys were working on some other jobs. And I said, you know what? What the heck? Let's give it a try. Let's enter as a home theater. And sure enough, we won. And I know you were there. I walked up the middle and gave you a high five. And you guys actually helped us out with that award in terms of some of the design and paperwork, along with a couple other people like Paradise Theaters. It came to me as a complete shock, to be honest with you. But it kind of set the wheels in motion, and it gave me a lot of confidence that I probably didn't have before as to we're on to something, meaning we're doing things the right way, because those awards are judged by your peers. And clearly you don't get these awards and things like that unless you're doing something right. So if anything came out of it, what came out of it for me is that Encore was on the track to do something fairly well, and that we had a good team in place to execute work. And from there, from 2012 to 2017, we won 12 awards. So within a 5-year span, I don't know if anybody's, I haven't done any research, but yes, we did have a pretty good run there. And what you said about CTA and CES and all the other things that came with it was in that time span as well. So a really good 5 years for the company.
So if I were to look at the fact that in 2015, you became CTA Integrator of the Year, and then a couple of years later, you were able to successfully sell your business. I know many listening, look at their business and they go, how would I go about finding a suitor? How would I go about finding someone that would give me the value that I believe this business is worth? And you successfully exited. And I'd love if you, for what you're able or willing to share with my audience here, how did you do that? That's not common. When you look around and look at integration companies, there aren't many that successfully sell.
There isn't. And even to this day, I don't see much of that going on. Clearly, we had the VIA, stuff that went on, I believe, and that was around 2013, 14, if I recall. And then, of course, most recently, Bravus, which is a little bit different makeup. And I was actually part of that for a year working with Star Systems. But it's a very interesting question. And I'm not sure that I went into Encore in 2007, thinking to myself, I want to sell the business. Now, it probably wasn't until we started gaining national recognition for the company that thought entered my mind. Because of the accolades and because we were starting to grow as a company, both financially, both with employees and gaining national attention, that I thought maybe we had something to sell. Otherwise, it's hard to sell you're just yourself. In a lot of cases, although I'm sure it's been done in small acquisitions. And really what prompted the whole thing was really interesting. My neighbor, where I had my business, was a company, and they did a lot of 4G networks. And so what they did is they did a lot of broadcasting antennas.
Look what I put up on the screen there, Ian.
Oh, that was way back in the day, man. Look how much younger I look.
I was over here in the background trying to find this image as you were talking about it, so I found it.
Well, thank you for the picture. That takes me back. And so I actually, the company on the corner, we were very good friends with. I've known for a lot of time, and actually one of my really good friends works for the company. One of my personal friends, and Kevin Teresi. And so we saw them all the time coming in and out. Their business was similar in terms of a service business, and they provided much more commercial than we were. But I always spoke to the owner, Andy. And he brought me in his office one time, and he said, would you ever be willing to sell your company? He said, we think your business has a lot of synergies with what we're doing. We're in a lot of conference rooms. We're in a lot of commercial buildings. We're constantly in front of the CEOs, and we're doing our thing. But I think we can make this work. And I mulled over it, and I said, yeah. I mean, if it was the right situation, of course, absolutely. And I believe in 2012 he gave me an offer, which I declined at that time, just because I thought Encore was really hitting its stride at that time, and I thought we were going to make a lot of significant and crucial moves to grow, and I just wasn't ready, but it was flattering nonetheless, and so that's what kind of got the gears turning. And he actually gave me, in 2017, approached me again about selling the company, and so that's when it really started to turn the cycle. And in early 2017, about February, March, they actually gave me a due diligence package to fill out. And I was actually going to sell my company to them. And we kind of put that on the back burner. I had some large projects starting and ending, and we kind of said, hey, let's move forward, but we are going to kind of hold off. In the meantime, really interesting, CePro Top 100 happened. Jason Knott reached out to me and asked me if I would like to be on one of the board discussions to talk about showrooms. We had just finished our showroom a year and a half prior, and I said, oh, I'd be happy to. And I am really good friends with Amr Den. And I don't know if you know Amr, but he was a branch manager at Avid, and then went and worked for Bethesda Systems, and then was currently at Casaplex in Maryland. And I saw him at CEPro Top 100, and he asked me about how my business was going, and I said, "Oh, it's great. We're growing, and things are good." But I was honest with him because I had known Amr for about 10 years. I just said, "Yeah, I think I'm just kind of starting to get a little burnout. It's just kind of going through the motions at this point.
You lost some of the fire.
Lost some of the fire, and I was just, it was a grind at this point, waking up, doing the same thing. And so I kind of lost a little bit of luster. And later on that summer, we were really doing well. And so I called him up out of the blue. And I was curious as to how they handled their sales structure for their salespeople, whether it was 100% commission, was it a base salary? And as soon as I opened my mouth, he says, "Are you still interested in selling the business?" And I said, "Well, I'm always open to have that discussion. Never say never, right?" And he goes, "Are you willing to meet me and Derek Goldstein next week?" the owner of Casaplex. And I said, sure, why not? You know, talks never hurt. And so from that discussion, to kind of wrap it up, 7-8 months later, I sold the business to Casaplex.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and if you're out there listening to this live, certainly pose your questions for Ian that you have as it relates to certainly the selling of his business or anything else that we're talking about. And by the way, if you're watching us here, I'm going to put up on the screen. Angel says, hello, Ian Williams. He says, hello, Ian. So if you're out there watching, say hello, drop us a comment. And if you'd be so kind, don't forget to share this out there so that more folks in our industry can see it live. That would be awesome. But Ian, I want to transition here because I'm just mindful of time and how much time we do have with you. Yeah, I just got a message that my audio was echoing, and now it is not echoing. Does it sound okay, Ian?
Yeah, it does on my end. So I just want to end that on one note for anybody who's thinking. And one stipulation I did have with the sale of my company is that I was to be hired back in a managerial role along with all of my employees. That was important to me. So
that was a term of the deal that you wanted to make sure no one got put out of.
Anybody to be without work. So that was important to me because Encore was certainly a family environment. So you had a stint at Star. Star was then acquired and absorbed into the Bravis acquisition that happened this past fall. You exited, and you made a decision, you and your family, to ultimately move to Charleston, South Carolina. I've been to Charleston. It's a beautiful city, wonderful food and restaurants. And you decided to do something crazy, ambitious, which is you're going to go do it again. You're going to start a new integration firm. And so can you share with us what was your thought process? Why do that, for example, versus, quote, getting a job? Why go start a new company? And then when you made that decision, how did you design your plan to be successful? Really great questions. So when we made the decision to move down here as a family, of course, it was a family decision. I have 3 sons, so we all sat at the family dinner table and made a couple trips down here. And I have family here, so that was one of the deciding factors. My mother and my sister live here, have for 13 years. And then my in-laws live just a couple hours away in Wilmington, North Carolina. So that was a big deciding factor. So it's just not like we uprooted and just moved to somewhere.
You didn't just throw a dart at the map and land in Charleston.
Just decided we wanted to go somewhere with palm trees. That wasn't it. So we made a decision, and one of the things is that I actually still had a contract with Star. Interestingly enough, so when Sean Weiner and myself we agreed that I was going to move down here, but we were going to sort of wean myself out of the Star systems over the course of the next couple of months. And this was all during the Bravis acquisition. And even at that time, I wasn't sure whether I was going to work for Bravis or not on the corporate side. None of that had been decided. So when I first got here, I was actually working from home, running Star Systems as the director of operations, which was roughly about 60 people, and flying back to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore every 2 weeks. But I knew that was ending. And so my plan was, in order to understand Charleston, because you never know, new town, new people, I had no idea what the building was like here, what relationships were like here, whether the work was done mostly in the city, was it done at Keel Island, was it done in Daniel Island, was it the beaches, North Charleston? I had no idea. So my thought process is the best thing that I thought that we could do is come here and go work for somebody in a management position. Unfortunately, there's just not a whole lot of companies here in Charleston. There are a few, and there are a few that do really good work, but they're not always necessary hiring, right? Yeah, they're smaller companies. I did find a company. I did go and work for them for about 2 months, and it wasn't intentional that I was going to quit, but it was within that 2-month time frame that I really got an itch to own my own business again. When I was hired for them, the intention was for me to actually take over the Charleston area, and the current branch manager was going to go open up a new facility in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so my intentions were to grow as the branch manager of this company in Charleston. Unfortunately, it wasn't that I wasn't happy. It was a great firm. We have a great relationship to this day. It's just, I'll have to be honest, ever since I sold the company in 2017, there's been a fire in my mind and in my soul that just hasn't been sparked and completed. And so I just really felt that this was the time. I felt confident. The 3-year break that I took, I learned a lot working for larger organizations in terms of process. And I thought in my mind that if I did it again this time, I could do it even better.
Let's get tactical here without giving or sharing any of your secret sauce. But what are some of the and let's just say maybe what's the hardest one? You're in a new market. They don't know Ian Williams. They don't know your legacy brand Encore.
They don't.
So you're entering a new market. You know stuff. You have an industry, specialty and through experience and knowledge. And you're perceiving there's a need. There aren't, quote, that many audio video automation companies. What were you thinking of how you were going to go out and develop business? So let's talk biz dev. What is the methods?
It's again, another great question. So one of the first things I noticed here when I moved to the Charleston area, which of course, when you move to a smaller towns, they're all great and they all have this charm about them, but they're not like a LA or a Miami. And I'm not insulting anybody that lives in a small town. I like the small town feel, but there's not a sense of urgency here. And I noticed that we have moved into a new house here, and even the subcontractors that were doing a lot of work, we had fence put in, patios, we had a bunch of stuff done, and there was just never a sense of urgency with the subcontractors. And after talking with a lot of the neighbors, that seemed to be a reoccurring theme. And so one of the things that I thought would be a major difference maker and something that I would lead with going into this biz dev was that we were different with what we say that we're going to do and with what we do, meaning our integrity. When we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. And so in a lot of these meetings, I've led with that, and I've kept these meetings very short. So one of the things that I did is I joined the CHBA, which is the Custom Home Builders Association of Charleston. And I got a list, and I was very tactical and very mindful of a strategic email that I composed. I sent it out to every single builder, production and custom. And all I asked was for a meeting, 15 minutes of their time. I actually had a very high success rate with that. I was able to compile about 10 to 15 meetings with face-to-face meetings, face-to-face times with these builders. And in the meantime, anybody that didn't follow up with me, we drove around and dropped off handwritten notes with Starbucks gift cards. So it was sort of a secondary follow-up.
Starbucks will get their attention.
It will. It always does. Everybody loves coffee. So while we were doing this, I was doing the same with the AIA. I was doing the same with the ASID. I was doing the same with Crane, which is a local architectural firm here, just for the Charleston area. And then what I did is I leaned on my CEDIA years and all the people I know at CEDIA being a registered, well, used to be registered outreach instructor. Now it's a COI. So I leaned on that. And so I teamed up with the Custom Home Builders Association, and I will be doing lunch and learns once a month in front of architects, builders, and interior designers. And I've had an extreme amount of luck with this. Matter of fact, another builder just reached out to me this morning, the vice president and the purchasing agent, and booked a meeting for the 21st. That being said, it's one thing to get the meeting. Okay, that's the first half of it. The second thing is, what do you say when you go into the meeting being the new guy with a brand new business, not knowing anybody? What does that approach look like? That approach for me has been very, very simple. Doing a lot of listening during those meetings, trying to understand why they're not happy. What are they not receiving from the local integrators here currently doing their work? Asking a lot of strategic questions as why did they take the meeting with me? Because if they didn't have a need or if they didn't have an interest, they wouldn't have asked me to come in and meet with me anyway. People are too busy nowadays. So I did a lot of listening, and my follow-up to what I heard was they were struggling with people showing up and finishing the jobs. And it wasn't so much the pre-wires and the trim outs. It was the final execution. It was that last 5%. And so, as you know, talking with enough builders and being in this industry long enough, what happens is the builders call, or the clients, what they do, they end up calling the builders.
Yeah, the customer is angry at the builder, certainly if the builder referred them.
Absolutely. So what I gathered was that clients were just sick and tired of being sick and tired. They were tired of the runaround, and so they were calling the builders and saying they weren't happy. We can't get in touch with so-and-so. This hasn't worked in a month. Something needs to happen. And so they didn't come out and just say that, but that's what I get. And so my one line to them is the proof is in the pudding. I could sit here and talk to you till you're blue in the face and tell you how great Aspire Audio Video Solutions is. All I'm asking is for an opportunity. And that was it. And that's closed 70, 80% of the deals. I said, just give me one opportunity to show you that we do things a little bit differently. And that's all. That's it. But you better bet your ass if they give you an opportunity, you better go out and execute, right? So
what are your that you're willing to share with my audience and I? What are your goals for 2020? How would you term it? Is it so many relationships? Is it a revenue goal? Is it to do so many types of projects? Is it to be here a year from now? Like what are your stated?
This is such a different experience from 2007. I opened that company with $500 in my pocket. I literally had, went out and bought some computer supplies, was working out of the house. And this time's a little bit different go around over the years that I've learned and what to invest in and what not to invest in, what's really important and what's not important. Where I thought that the shiny things over here was important. Now that I'm 42 and this is my third business, those things aren't so shiny anymore. For me, it's about making money and making clients happy. So my agenda and the way I went about opening this business, very different than the last two companies that I opened. So for me, this year, especially in Q1 and Q2, are very, very important with relationships. The relationships that I garner within the community with the interior designers, the builders, and the architects is what's going to funnel this business in Q3 and Q4. In the meantime, what we need to do is working with someone like yourself, which you guys are working with us and helping us with our SEO and our branding and our blogs, is getting some of that organic homeowners to call and get work that way. So, but we're really hitting the builders hard, architects hard, the interior designers very, very hard, and doing a lot of local education.
Got it. Did you, just out of curiosity, in the past you were CEDIA, COI certified. Did you have to do anything to re-up that certification?
I did not. No, I called CEDIA, and I've done enough of it over the years at Casaplex. Did a ton of it. I took a hiatus at Star at 9 months because of the position I was in just didn't afford me to go out and do those type of things. But now I've already have 10, I think, COIs already scheduled for the 2020 year, along with a lot of sponsorships that we've been, blessed to be able to contribute to in the local community, which is going to get our name out there. And again, it's really about the execution. I'm really big on process and that rather than more of the sales side and the education and operations.
To close this out, I want to cover a couple of quick categories. One is I'm going to get your contact information out there. So if those are listening or watching either here live or they're listening to the podcast after the fact, how can people either follow your business or follow you personally? What would you recommend?
They can reach me. Anybody can reach me with any questions, concerns, from A to Z at Ian, IAN, at aspireavs.com.
All right, I'm going to put that up on the screen. Did I get that right?
I did. You did.
All right, perfect.
They can reach me at 843-418-6700. And someone who answers the phone will know how to get in touch with me.
Give me that phone number one more time. I'm going to scroll it across the screen.
843 418 6700.
6700. And there, I'll crawl that across the screen. So anybody that wants
also on LinkedIn and also on Facebook. Anybody with any questions in terms of business and operations, feel free to DM me or give me a call personally. I am a true believer in helping others within this crazy industry that we call home.
That is, we do call it home. 20 years. Question, or last thing I'd love you to cover, Ian, if you're game, and that is there are those that are listening that maybe feel stuck in terms of where their business is at, and what would be, with some specific areas of focus, what would be some things you'd advise they focus on if they want to take their business to the next level and grow it?
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about a couple of things, and we're at 110, so I'll keep that mindful. As I said before, and I've said it again, I'm an ops guy. Always have been, always will be. I can sell only because I love what I do. It kind of comes naturally, but I'm not a hunter. I'm not a gatherer when it comes to sales, and I never will be. But I do love talking about our industry. So first and foremost is process. Wash, rinse, repeat. Okay, don't make this more complicated than it has to be. I think a lot of times, when talking, with others, is we have a tendency to overcomplicate this industry, and of course, we're on the verge of cutting edge technology on a daily basis, and it's forever changing. We don't always have to be in that mindset. Find out what works within your own organization, and stick to it, and write a process around that, or better yet, write the process first. And that it took me a long time to understand that without a process, you're just driving around.
When you say write the process, and I agree with you, sorry to jump in there, Ian, but I want to hammer this home a little bit better. Give Give us an example of an operational activity within an integration firm and how one would go about writing that process.
So,
and then the purpose of writing that process.
Yeah. So first and foremost, and everybody's different because all the size companies are different. So whether you're a 1 or 2 man operation, whether you're, a $5 million company and you have 25 employees, or if you're like Star, $10 million company and you have 60 employees, I think it's the same across the board. It's just how granular you're going to get. So first and foremost, you have to have a business plan. Okay. That's the Quran, that's the Bible, that's the roadmap. Without a business plan, how do you know what your goals are? How do you know what your expectations are? How do you expect to know where you're going to get to and how and when? And then refer to that business plan every month and say, hey, am I on track? And then, of course, revise that business plan quarterly. Because you may not be on track, you may be ahead of schedule. So you want to constantly be looking at your business plan, revise your business plan. Secondly is, I'm a huge proponent of, some sort of financial software, which is going to be a QuickBooks. And then there's a ton of softwares out there, whether it's D-Tools, Simply Reliable. What did we use it? There's a ton of them out there, but
Portal,
can't remember what we used at Star, but you have to have some sort of process in that regard set up. So you have to understand,
what is the reason to document a process? So again, I'm going to zero back to my question. I'm going to restate it. What is an example of a process within an integration company that should be documented? And once you've documented it, what do you do with that written document? So like what's an activity that happens in a business, from installing a TV to building an equipment rack? What's a good example, and help my audience understand what is the benefit of having produced the said documentation?
So at the end of the day, it comes down to a P&L. Okay. You have a profit, you have a loss. Are you making money on the job site, or are you not making money on the job site? That's the purpose of process. If you don't have documentation, and I'll get to the documentation in a second, what I've used and what we've used and what I've used over the years to get to that point. But if you don't know how many labor hours in your departments, whether it's just you, whether it's project management, whether it's design and engineering, programming, installation throughout your 3 phases, which we typically look at stuff, pre-wires, trim, finals. If you don't have a process for that and understand your labor hours, how do you know what type of money you're, 1, making, and 2, how do you know about what process to improve upon? So I'll give you an example. If you have 100 hours that you've sold on a project, and let's just, for the sake of the ease of this time, you divide it 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. Okay, you have a pre-wire, trim, a final, programming, and design and engineering, 20 hours each. If it took me 40 hours to program that job, if it's not documented, and if it's not documented as to what we did and what that process was, how can we fix that on the next job we sell that is the same job?
To understand how you grossly miscalculated the forecast versus actual.
So what you're going to do is you're going to continually lose 20 hours on that same programming job every single time. Well, why not make that adjustment, charge 40 hours, and then that way you're not losing money. You're actually making your P&L that you set out to make, or your gross margin. Because what you do, and this has been my experience, Ron, over the years, we all know what we're making on the black boxes. We all know what we're making on the projectors, the TVs, the amplifiers, the speakers. Typically, it's a 50-point margin, sometimes 40, sometimes 30, sometimes 60, sometimes 70 if you're working with Snap. We know what that number is. The number we don't know and what this industry is terrible at is labor. Labor is the most difficult thing to try to figure out. One thing that I did that is complete that one day I'll get to share with the world somehow. I spent about, I would say, 18 months in developing what's called a labor calculator. It allows you to plug in about 25 or 30 blocks, and then it spits out, generates 6 different areas of labor, generates the total hours, turns out the time. It's a very intensive Excel spreadsheet that I created. And so what I can do with that is I can take those numbers and then put them into something like Simply Reliable to ensure and then cross-reference and make sure my labor hours are on point. But labor hours are either going to make your business or it's going to kill your business. So that's one. Secondly is the service and support. Most companies out there are probably not charging accurately for their service and support. Because what they get thrown in their face all the time is, I just spent $100,000 with you, 6 months down the road, this should be working. Why should I pay you, $150 to come out here and service and support my system? This should work forever. That's about setting proper expectations up front. Now that it's electronics, there's going to be a problem. In my new business, it is non-negotiable that every client of mine is on a service plan. Non-negotiable. It's written in the proposal.
Does that mean you're charging the client some amount of money and they're agreeing to some terms of service?
Yes.
Post-sale, post-installation?
Yes. And if they don't, they won't be a client of ours because it's impossible. And we struggle as an industry so much on the service and support side. Whether you have your own service and support team internally or you use something like a Parasol or One Vision, which is both great companies. We personally use Parasol. It's very inexpensive, and in my eyes, $50 for 24/7 support a month. It's a no-brainer. Working with 2 larger integration firms, the service and support departments were the most difficult to run.
Yeah. No, I think we could spend a whole nother hour talking about service and support and maintenance plans.
Very difficult.
We'll put a fork in that one if you will allow. I'm mindful of your time and your next meeting. Believe it or not, Ian, we've been talking here for almost 50 minutes.
Yep.
And I want to thank you for being gracious with your time and your willingness to share so freely and transparently with my audience. It's been great having you on.
Absolutely. Loved every minute of it.
Awesome. And I'm going to put up on the screen here. We do have another person that dropped a message. It's Thomas coming to us from Panama. He says, Ron, great interview. Very inspiring also. So there you go, Ian. You've inspired your person for the day. So you can check that box off when you go to sleep tonight. So it was great having you on, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, man.
All right, guys, gals, there you have it. Episode number 94 of Automation Unplugged. I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you have not done so already, please go over to your favorite podcast platform and search for Automation Unplugged. And there you'll see we're doing our best to get certainly all new shows up on the platform for podcasts. You can subscribe, and then in due time, we're going to get our older shows up there as well. So definitely take a peek, check that out, and subscribe. And on that note, I will bid you adieu, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.